Welcome back to the show. It's Faraz Siddiqui, Zach Rizzuto. This is the buys and sells episode. Who we're trying to buy, maybe on the cheap, maybe buy them high, but also who we're trying to move off of our team, maybe take advantage of some peak values and trade them before they come crashing down. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you listen so you can get the newest episodes onto your feed as soon as they're out. Maybe even turn on notifications so you can know when the latest episode is available. Zach, I have a little story to talk about, and you know this story, but I'm just going to talk about it anyway for our listeners. You know, in our home league that you're a part of, right? I've been talking a little smack this year, specifically when I outbid other people on waivers. When I outbid one of our league mates, Hummy, on Puka Nacua after week 1 by $1, right? I screenshotted that and I sent it to our chat, with some funny GIF or whatever. In this case, I think it was DiCaprio in Django, like drinking out of his cup, right? And then a couple weeks later, I outbid our league mate Alberto on Kenny Gainwell by $1. And for some reason, like that was a shitty like waiver wire pickup. Who cares? I still felt the need, to like talk some shit, and I still felt the need to flex, right? Because I outbid him. I outbid, by $1. Okay. So a week later, I get outbid by $1 from Hummy on some player, whoever it was, the first guy that I talked smack to, so he gets back at me, sends the GIF back to me, right? I lost there, so he got me back, okay? And then this past week, I'm going up against Alberto, the second guy who I talk shit to, and by the way, I've since dropped Kenny Gainwell, so who cares, right? And I go up against him this week, and guess how many points he beats me by? 1 point. Okay. It's fantasy karma, dude. It's fantasy karma, okay? It's real. I'm not going to talk smack the rest of this fantasy season, okay? I'm done, okay? It's not serving me. I'm usually quiet. Like last year, I was quiet. I won the league last year, and I was quiet. And now, I was quiet. And now this year, I'm talking a little shit, and I feel like it's going to bite me in the ass. So I'm just going to stop. Like, I felt a little feisty early on, but it doesn't serve me. So I'm going to stop here.
That's fair. And I'll tell you this. I have been having the same struggle with these being outbid by $1. It just happened. I think his name's Amari DeMarcado, or however you want to say his name. The Cardinals running back. I put $29 on him this week because that was a magic number. I think it was 29 and 28 for you, right? When you were bidding on Puka Nacua or something like that.
I think Puka was like 28, I think. Yeah.
Right. So I put $29 on him, hoping for the best. And I got outbid by $1. $30 bid came in and beat me on it. Now, I only need that running back depth because I have Jahmyr Gibbs. Even though he might be back this week, I'm still not expecting a whole lot from him as long as Dave Montgomery's doing his thing. But still, that was upsetting. So before this morning, I couldn't really relate to this whole story that you just told, but now I can. I'm part of this problem because I was in the home league too. It wasn't just like some other league that I had. It seems like people are getting sniped all the time on the waiver wire here. So I got to start upping my waiver bets.
I didn't realize that. This morning, Ricky outbid you by $1.
It's pissing me off.
$30.
I was thinking about it. Listen, I wanted to go with 30, but it's
don't say anything.
Oh, no, I'm not
text
going
Ricky
to.
right now. I'm going to text Ricky right now and say, hey, I know you saw it. Don't talk shit because you will continue to lose.
Listen, I've been so quiet in this league. I that was my first waiver wire pickup. I'm one of these guys, I tend to stick to my guns with the players that I have. And I was doing all right, but I played 2 straight matchups where my opponent scored 200 and 183 points. So it's been a rough go of it so far. I mean, I'm doing all right in terms of points scored, but just my record isn't there yet. So when that kind of thing is happening, I tend to just kind of leave my team as is. I'm not panicking, but I was trying to get some running back depth because I need it. Because my next guy up after Jahmyr Gibbs and Brian Robinson, it's Cam Akers. It was Devon Achane, but now he's out. Achane, excuse me.
So just to recap all the players who are currently hurt and who are going to miss time. We broke all this down on yesterday's episode, so just make sure to listen to all that if you missed it, because we're not going to go in details about what it means and all that kind of stuff. But, just to recap, Justin Jefferson is going on IR. If he only misses 4 games, he'll still have a few games before his bye. James Conner also going on IR. He'll also have a few games before his bye if he comes back after just 4 games. Devon Achane, as of right now, Adam Schefter just reported this morning that he is also going to go on IR. that Carolina game, this upcoming week for Devon Achane was looking so damn juicy. But, keep in mind that after 4 games for him, he has the week 10 bye. Okay? So the earliest that he is going to return is week 11. Okay? So that's 5 weeks from now where, you're going to have to miss out on Achane. Yeah, this sucks.
Yeah. That's like super IR. It's like terrible.
Dude, what's up this week, man? It sucks, dude. Like, we got some really good players going on IR here. It's nuts.
Did you see? I think I saw. I don't know if this is correct, but I saw it. It was on Catch the Blitz. They put out that Anthony Richardson's going on IR now. Like,
yes,
everybody's falling. Like, they're dropping like flies, and it's ridiculous. Like, I put out in the newsletter this morning. I was like, I hope this newsletter finds you without any more major injury news. And there's more major injury news. It's like, what the heck? They're all just falling apart right now. Like, fantasy managers, they're going to be in shambles. Like, if you had any of these guys, like, the replacement campaign is going to be ridiculous. You're not going to be able to replace these guys, obviously, like Justin Jefferson, Anthony Richardson even, I'd be upset about because he was going to be top 5 fantasy quarterback if he just gets a couple games strung together.
Oh, yeah. He was a top 5 fantasy quarterback, man. He was killing it. And they're reporting 4 to 8 weeks. So, obviously, it's a minimum of 4 because he's on IR. But Adam Schefter said that it could be longer, And from what I've seen, that there is a possibility that he needs surgery, but that's something that they're going to decide on a little bit later. So, not a great situation there. Gardner Minshew, I ended up picking him up in this league. Spent a little bit on him because I needed that second, that super flex quarterback, which I didn't really have, and I think it worked. It'll work out because I'm going to have him for at least 4 weeks, So we'll see how that ends up going.
I think he can get it done. He hasn't looked bad, so I'm fine with it. Yeah, I mean, if he's putting up 14 or 15 points in your super flex, I think you're all right with that. It beats crap out of putting some guy like some rando wide receiver in and just hoping for the best. Because sometimes you get those weeks where they have a lot of points, but quarterbacks are consistent producers for the most part.
They have that high floor, exactly. Austin Eckler said that he's 99% sure he's playing on Monday night. That's great news. Welcome back. For Thursday night, Travis Kelce is practicing. Javonte Williams is practicing. I'd expect Javonte to get more of his workload back this week. But I will expect Jaleel McLaughlin to get some work. He's looked good, and I can't imagine that he just goes away because I think they're going to use him. Sean Payton is his pet project, so I feel like he's going to get some work here. I think he's an upside flex play at best right now, but there is some upside there. Dalton Kincaid is in the concussion protocol. He might miss this week, so Dawson Knox could be a potential streamer if you need it at tight end. Van Jefferson was traded to the Falcons. Falcons will probably make him their top weapon. Deshaun Watson might not. I'm just kidding, guys. Deshaun Watson might not play this week, and if he doesn't play, PJ Walker will be the quarterback that will likely get the start. Yeah, man. I'll probably still play Amari, but he gets downgraded, I think, to a wide receiver 3. Kind of have no idea what to expect here. Kind of sucks there. Also, Dan Campbell said that Amon-Ra St. Brown has a pretty good chance to play in Week 6, probably closer to probable than questionable. That's his words, by the way, that he plays. So great news there. Hopefully he can be good to go. That probably rules out that sports hernia injury that we didn't want to see. That was a potential potential.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Sorry, just one thing. That's like the little droplet of good news that we've had this week.
That's it. That's it.
That's all we have to hang around. Okay, that too. But it's like bittersweet for me because obviously I'm a Cowboys fan and they're playing the Cowboys, but it's fine.
It's fine. It's all good. It's all fine.
It's nice to see a little good news in a week where it's just been all bad.
Deontay Johnson said that he's completely healthy. He'll be back Week 7 against the Rams after the Steelers bye week. So it seems like you can plug him in right away as a wide receiver 3 in his first week back, and then maybe we can potentially upgrade him as he ramps up. But in the meantime, I'm selling George Pickens right now before Deontay is back and before the bye week. Here's the thing with Pickens. He's pretty good against man coverage, right? We saw that big touchdown that he had late last week. It was against man coverage. He said he knew it was man coverage. The play was changed into a go route, and he won, right? That's his wheelhouse. He's really good at it. His other big game this year was against Cleveland in Week 2, 4 for 127 and a touchdown. They're also a team that plays man coverage a majority of the time. He didn't do much in Week 4 against Houston. They play a zone scheme a majority of the time. And if you look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, Deontay Johnson doesn't have any issues in man or zone coverage. In fact, he dominates 85th percentile and 88th percentile win percentage, respectively, in man and zone coverage. So George Pickens, on the other hand, 5th percentile in winning against zone. Okay, so that means he's not good at that. And the league is moving towards more and more zone every year, and teams now play significantly more zone than man overall. So check this out. He has a bye this week. Week 7, he gets the Rams, mostly zone, tough matchup anyway. Then Jaguars. They play zone at a 65% rate, so that's a big zone team. Week 9 against the Titans, big zone team. Week 10 against the Packers, 66% zone rate, big zone team. So not great. So I'm taking advantage of a couple of big games from Pickens, and I'm selling him because I'm also not sure he can maintain these high target shares that he's had without Deontay Johnson in the lineup. And now that Deontay's coming back, I would imagine that Deontay just goes right back into being the alpha here. In Pittsburgh. This is something that we've seen. The entire sample size shows that Deontay Johnson will get the high target share and Pickens will not. So that's kind of what I'm expecting moving forward.
Yeah, right. And that's been the gripe the whole time with George Pickens coming into the season, and it's just kind of manifested itself, this season. Obviously, the target share doesn't look that bad, but that's, like you mentioned, because Deontay Johnson has been out this whole time when there's really nobody else for them to throw to. I mean, who's going to get the ball? George Pickens is a guy at the jump ball that's going to be able to make a difference on the team. And you just look at the game last week. Like, does this look like a fantasy conducive offense to you? When your quarterback has to check out of a play. I mean, I don't know if you saw like the memes, but they showed the camera angle of Matt Canada watching Kenny Pickett check out of the play into a deep pass on a go route to Pickens, and they score, and there was no reaction at all. He was just sitting there with like this straight face. It's like, is he salty that his play got checked out? I don't know. It's clear that Matt Canada is a problem. That could be the case, but the offense just isn't that good. It took them until the very end of the game to put up, I think it was their first touchdown, right? Because they had kicked field goals up to that point. That's how they were, and had a field goal, a safety, and a field goal. And then they scored the touchdown. It was just ridiculous. This offense is not that good. So the fact that Pickens is doing this on a bad offense is already defying the odds. And then you mentioned the fact that Deontay Johnson is going to come back, and when he's on the field, he just gets the targets. Like, his workload is about to be significantly reduced. And then also, I mean, like you mentioned, he's on bye this week. That might make it a little bit tougher to sell him, but I think you still need to move off him while he has these 2 games in his game log that look really good. He has 2 games with 10 targets, and in both of those games, he scored a touchdown. Take advantage of those weeks. Move off of George Pickens, because we've been on this pretty much all season. You know what I mean? Like, we've been saying this even when he wasn't scoring touchdowns. He's getting these target shares that are relatively high, but once Deontay Johnson's back, that's going to change. I have another sell, and it's also a wide receiver. Different division, but I'm talking about DeAndre Hopkins. He is a screaming sell after having by far his best game in a Titans uniform. I mean, what was the number one issue we had with Hopkins going into Tennessee, coming into the season? It wasn't his talent or his ability to demand targets. He did that in Houston. He did it in Arizona, and surprise, surprise, he's doing it again with the Titans. The problem is that the Titans are one of the least, if not the least, they're right up there with the Steelers, fantasy conducive passing offenses in the league. I mean, it's not rocket science to see that he's suffering because of his situation. He has a 30% target share in the season. He has a 43% air yard share in the season, 29% targets per route run, but just one top 35 performance to show for it? That's a little odd. This past week against the exploitable Colts secondary was the first time that he actually had production that matches the utilization he's got. And if you've seen Ryan Tannehill play, it hasn't been very good. The passing offense has not been there. So the data that was gathered by Dwayne McFarland over at Fantasy Life, he tells us that 25% target share and 31% air yard share is indicative of wide receiver 1 production. And Hopkins is blowing those out of the water. So what gives? The truth is that 30% target share that he has in Tennessee, it's a lot different from 30% target share in other offenses like Minnesota. Justin Jefferson has a 27% target share. He's getting a lot more targets, even though it's a little bit less or just about the same in terms of target share on the team. And then also 30% target share on the Chargers for Keenan Allen is much different than 30% target share in this Titans offense. Before last week, he had catch totals of 4, 3, and 4 in his past 3 games. And the next 3 weeks that he has coming up, tough matchup against Baltimore in week 6, a bye in week 7, and another tough matchup against Atlanta in week 8. So there's not a whole lot of upside these next few weeks. There's a chance that he's going to have more of those quiet games that we saw to open the season. This past game that he had 22 points. It was an outlier, and he still didn't score a touchdown. It was based on high usage alone. So I would capitalize on his value right now. go choose a better receiver in a better situation, even if you have to package him up, DeAndre Hopkins with a side piece to do whatever trade you need to upgrade at wide receiver, I would do it.
You might be able to get Chris Olave. I'm going to keep talking about Chris Olave, right? You could get him 1-for-1 potentially. Like Hopkins has been, doing his thing lately and having a couple of decent games on his game log where you can say like, okay, well, Olave hasn't. Give me Olave. Easy money. By the way, guys, Tyler on our team does an amazing job with the trade charts every week with, giving players specific values to help you make trades. So make sure you go check that out on our website at upperhandfantasy.com. Our weekly positional flex and super flex rankings will be up there as well, including buy, sell articles, and a ton more. So go visit the website at upperhandfantasy.com. I have a running back that we can buy low, and that's Dameon Pierce. It doesn't look amazing at first glance on paper, but there are a few reasons why it can get better. And I'm not saying that Pierce is going to be like an RB1 or anything like that anytime soon. He's been a low-end RB2 at best, and at times he's just a flex play. Like in terms of like playing him, you don't feel great about it, right? But things should get better. Okay, a few reasons. The first is that his share in the backfield just got significantly better. He had 100% of the running back carries in week 4. He had 100% of the carries in week 5. Okay, Devin Singletary, according to Fantasy Life's utilization report, was getting 28% of the rushing work over the first 4 weeks of the season. 2 of those weeks, he had a 39% share and a 36% share. Okay, that's significant enough to downgrade Pierce, especially if he's only getting work on early downs, which he still is, by the way. But if he's going to get 80% or more of the rushing work, let alone 100% like he did last week, things should get better. Okay, and there's a chance that he can be a high-end RB2 soon enough. The Texans' offense is way better than we thought it was going to be, right? He just got 2 key offensive linemen back, right, this past week, Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard. Okay, and in weeks 1 through 4, Pierce had the 5th highest rate of being stuffed, and that should get better. Okay, now the production on 20 carries for Pierce wasn't amazing this past week in week 5, but they were also playing the Falcons, right? Who, like the week before, they saw Travis Etienne. He had the same amount of carries as Pierce did, and he had less production. Okay, so 24 and 20 carries over the last 2 games for Pierce. The volume is there. He should have a big game here soon. Pierce is still 9th among 30 qualifying running backs in missed tackles forced per attempt. He was first in that category last year, ahead of Nick Chubb. Okay, and this year, 5th overall in most missed tackles this season. So, he's not getting passing down work, right? He's going to get goal line work, though. This offense is, ascending. So he is a game script dependent running back, no doubt. He's in that Brian Robinson category. But he does have a little bit more upside because he's on a better offense. Okay, so if you're looking for an RB2 that you don't have to give up so much for, I think he's a solid target.
Yeah, and you mentioned you could put him in that Brian Robinson bucket, but I would say that Dameon Pierce is a little bit more talented. If you ask me, Brian Robinson, he's definitely someone that the Commanders want to use, but Dameon Pierce is much more talented. And I think that you're right. You're onto something. If this game script goes his way, like Dameon Pierce, he hasn't had that big game yet, go for it. Because chances are the person that has Dameon Pierce right now has been like super watered down in terms of the, like the returns that he's given them. They're looking at Dameon Pierce probably as an expendable piece, and they probably feel better about starting him as a flex right now than they do as the RB2, which they drafted him to be. But that doesn't mean he can't be that. All those stats that you picked out right there, I would have leaned into. And you mentioned too, also that the offensive line is going to be getting better. That's going to be a big difference. It's not a small thing when you get your offensive line back that it can get a lot better. It's not a small thing for a running back. So I'm in on Dameon Pierce too here. I don't think he's a bad pick as a buy at all. It's just interesting because the Texans have been passing the ball so much. He got a high workload last week. I'm interested to see how they look in these next few weeks where there's actually tougher matchups for them on paper in terms of the passing game. They're going to be playing the Saints and that kind of thing. So I'm a fan. I like the call there. If there's another running back that you want to buy, now this one might be a little bit more obvious. Obviously Dameon Pierce hasn't had that production yet. This is a guy that I'm going to talk about that's had that production already, but 2 of his past 3 games, not so hot. And that's Kyren Williams from the Rams. The awesome thing about this guy is that even when he has a bad week, the utilization, it's still really good to the point that you don't feel as bad about the low production. Like if he's getting 15 touches in a game script that's way behind anyway, and he's beating anybody else out in the backfield for those touches. Like you can't feel that bad about Kyren Williams. Ronnie Rivers hasn't been a factor. And granted, like I just mentioned, the competition for touches in that backfield isn't that great, but he's locking it down. There's nothing wrong with what Kyren Williams is doing. As long as it keeps happening, we're going to be happy for him. I mean, how successful did we expect Kyren Williams to be in a game against a tough Eagles front and in a game that they were playing from behind? Like, we could have guessed probably going into this game that they were going to be behind. Now, I did have him ranked as a top 10 running back. So that's one thing. That's based on the ceiling that he could have turned around last week, but he didn't really come through. But that's fine because we talked about the utilization that's there. If Williams would have scored a touchdown last week, there wouldn't be an opening to buy him this week going into a solid stretch of games. Features 2 back-to-back matchups against teams inside the top 12 for most points allowed to the position. Arizona this week is allowing the 4th most fantasy points to running backs, by the way, and that's who the Rams play this week. He's still got a stranglehold on the backfield. All the work is his. He took a season-high 92% of the team's RB carries against the Eagles, while also putting up a 76% route participation. So nothing's changed from a utilization standpoint. 2 quiet games out of 3 since week 3 should be enough to give his current manager a little bit of cold feet. They might be willing to move off of him, and you can take advantage of that if they're open to selling. I think that he's a really nice target right now. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast and you have Kyren Williams already, you're not going to be selling him. But anybody who isn't as attached or in tune with the utilization numbers that we're seeing, they might be willing to move off of him if they're just one of those box score guys that look at it and be like, what are you doing for me just in terms of production? I think you could go get Kyren Williams at a pretty good price right now.
Yeah, it's all about the way that Sean McVay uses this guy. It's all about the Rams. It's all about this offensive line actually creating. This offensive line I thought was going to really be bad, but they're not bad, right? And they've actually created a lot of yards before contact, which is actually what is allowing an average talent like Kyren Williams to succeed. If you look at the numbers here, like forced missed tackles per attempt, average, yards after contact per attempt, terrible. So this is not somebody who is a talented running back. Okay, this is somebody who is being placed in a role that just like outputs fantasy points, right? And that's what's happening here. He's good enough where he's able to do it. And also, he's versatile, right? Like, he's very, very involved in the receiving game. He's being targeted a ton. So this is what you want, Unless the Rams make a move for a running back, there's nothing happening here. A lot of people are worried that the rug's going to get pulled out from under Kyren Williams at some point. And I get the concern there because of the fact that he's not the screaming talent that they found. But at the end of the day, he's getting the work. And he is getting like top 5, weighted opportunity among all running backs right now. Okay, that's exactly what you want. Opportunity is king. Okay, so I agree, man. If there's any way that you could pull Kyren Williams off a team right now, I think that is a great move. So check this out. If I'm losing, okay, if I'm 0-5, if I'm 1-4, 2-3, maybe not so much. Really depends on your team. If you don't have depth, and you think Justin Jefferson was really like the one guy who would have carried your team and you were still losing, even with him, I'm looking to see what I can get for him. Okay, if I'm winning, I'm 5-0, 4-1, I'm definitely looking to see what I need to give up to get him, right? Especially if I have an IR spot, right? So if I'm already losing and I want to sell Jefferson, it probably means that the rest of your team wasn't that good. So I'd want to potentially fill 2 spots, right? Usually I like to do 2 for 1s. In this case, I'll do a 1 for 2. Okay, so I'll get 2 players back for Jefferson. I would go straight to the 5-0 team, go straight to the 4-1 teams, look at the roster, and see if they'd be willing to give up maybe an RB2 and a wide receiver 2. Maybe a Puka and a Mixon, right? Or an Aaron Jones and a Nico Collins, an Amon-Ra or a Pacheco. Do those, I'm just checking with you, Zach, real quick. Like, if you were a Justin Jefferson owner and you're losing, do those seem okay to you?
I would, think twice maybe about Aaron Jones and Nico Collins just because Aaron Jones hasn't been super productive, and Nico Collins, I like Nico Collins. I think I would be a little leery of that one, but at this point, if you are a losing team, I think that it wouldn't be something I just rule out immediately. There's definitely, you have to give it thought.
One thing with Aaron Jones is that he is going into a bye this week, so maybe that's not the best one to get because you don't want to trade away Justin Jefferson and then you have a running back who's on bye. So maybe that's not a great example. But that would be the only limitation I have with Aaron Jones.
I see what you were saying.
I see what you're saying. If Aaron Jones did not have a bye, I think I'll be okay with it because I could potentially have a high end RB2 play. Listen, the only reason why Aaron Jones isn't a thing right now is because he's not healthy, right? But I think after the bye, he should be good to go. Yeah. So these guys that I mentioned, they could have big games, right? And now you have two extra chances now that one of these guys could potentially blow up in your lineup, right? And that's what you need. That's what you need to win your matchups. So, something that you might not have had before, right? So JJ was really only that guy for you. So you want to give yourself a chance in these next few weeks. This could be an opportunity for you to do that. Maybe a Tony Pollard and Jacoby Myers, and Olave and Roshan Johnson maybe. I don't know, right? So you have to look at these teams. I think a lot of teams will be willing to buy Jefferson, to be locked and loaded for a playoff run. And if you're worried about making a good team better and you don't want to trade them Justin Jefferson, you're focused on the wrong things and you're probably going to lose anyway. Okay, so throw Jefferson on the block, make it a bidding war if possible. If I have a good record and I'm trying to buy Jefferson, I'm lowballing these teams like crazy. Okay, this is the other perspective on it. Like, I obviously don't want to give too much up in case they take their time with Jefferson, if the Vikings do, right? In case Kirk Cousins gets traded, if they keep losing, right? Because what's the point of keeping him on when you can get draft capital and he's a free agent next year? He's not your long-term quarterback, right? And then you risk losing the next few games on top of that. So there are situations on both sides here that you can take advantage of, but don't give up if you're 1-4 and you lost Jefferson, okay? Don't think that the season's over. You have an opportunity here. You never know. You will not be the first one to win your league after going 1-4. It happens all the time.
Yeah, and you just have to pound that one home because you can have a bad start to the season. They say it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And I think that very much lines up with how it works in fantasy football. But to anybody that's saying that the Vikings aren't going to trade Kirk Cousins, and I'm not going to say that they're going to, this season. But when you have, let's see, they're 1-4, right? Your best player just got injured. Your star wide receiver just got injured. What is stopping you from trading Kirk Cousins at this point? You know what I mean? Because this clearly isn't your year. I don't want to say that they're just going to not play well, but you're missing Justin Jefferson already. Things are already going in a direction where you're not going to get anywhere close to where you were last year in terms of your record. They were 13-4 last year, and they already have as many losses through 5 games as they did through 17 last year. I think it's definitely in the cards where Kirk Cousins could be moved, and then that hurts Justin Jefferson. So there's definitely risk coming on if you're going to go buy Justin Jefferson, not only because he's going to miss time, but also because the situation could be a little bit different. But that's the type of move you make if you're winning and you can get him for cheap. Like, if, just to use your example, if all I have to give up is Aaron Jones and Nico Collins, like, come on. I definitely take the potential upside on that offer and, just take Justin Jefferson and hope that he comes back and that the situation is the same as when he, went on the IR. But I'm absolutely in on this move. Obviously, if you're losing, you definitely want to move him as well. I wouldn't hold on to him because at this point, it's not that it's getting late, but it's getting late. You know what I mean? You need to get some wins.
It's worth noting that the Vikings, are working out quarterbacks right now. Okay, so like they brought in
that is interesting.
They brought in who was it? It was a former Vikings quarterback. I forgot who it was, but Colt McCoy. So they're working out other quarterbacks, and why they're working out other quarterbacks right now. Like, I don't know.
Just look at this. Like the Vikings too. Just to pile on to this, you mentioned the conspiracy about the Kirk Cousins trade. Trade Kirk Cousins, tank this season. Not necessarily tank, but you're not going to have a good record if you do that. Look at the quarterback class coming up.
Yeah.
Like, there's all these different all the arrows are kind of pointing towards, like, if you want to play the long-term game here, like, sure, this season might suck. You're missing your best player. And Kirk Cousins, if he leaves, you're not going to do well, but it could pay off in the long run. Just interesting. That's your point.
You wait. So listen, you lose another game or two. You trade Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
You get a second-round pick from the Jets, and then you get one of Caleb Williams, Drake May, Shador Williams. Yeah, that's
Shador.
right.
Shador Williams.
Sanders.
Shador Sanders.
Sorry. Right? Like, you get one of those 3.
Yeah, Shador Williams and Caleb Sanders. Yeah.
Caleb Sanders actually has a nice ring to it, actually. You get one of those 3 guys.
Yeah.
And you're sitting pretty.
That's
funny.
What I'm
saying? I don't know. And yes, the Jets should go get Kirk Cousins right now. We should do it.
Honestly, I think that's fair. And I wouldn't say I want to hang on to Zach Wilson and hope that he'll turn things around, but he's not going to.
We're in a Super Bowl window.
Now,
okay, we have to.
If Kirk Cousins would go to New York, and this is just an off-the-cuff question I have, what would happen to Garrett Wilson's stock? It would be way up again.
Are you kidding me?
So, like,
it would be nuts.
in anticipation, like here's a good thing. We're talking about buy sells. Is Garrett Wilson a potential buy? Like if you really want to buy into that, like you could get him cheap. We know. Like I don't think there's an argument where he's going to be that expensive. You can get him relatively cheap. Like there's an upside there. And obviously it's a lot of speculation, but boy, that could turn around a fantasy season for a team that needs it or really just put someone over the top right now.
Don't tease me, Zach. All right, let's get into the next guy.
Yeah, the next guy I'm looking to sell, Dalton Schultz. Now, Zach, why are you talking about a guy that wasn't relevant 2 weeks ago? Because he's been relevant these past 2 weeks. Did Schultz do you a solid or what by coming through not 1 week, but 2 weeks in a row? He's been the PPR tight end 4 and 5 in weeks 4 and 5, oddly enough, and he's also scored in both of those games. The difference between those two finishes, he saw just 3 targets in week 4, but 10 targets in week 5. And I remember coming off of that week 4 performance where you're like, well, the usage wasn't necessarily there. He scored that touchdown, and it just happened to be his day. You know, all it takes is 1 touchdown to finish as a top 12 tight end right now. But you saw he only had those 3 targets. But this week is up to 10 targets. That's great. You look at his game log on Fantasy Life's utilization report, 40% targets per route run, 33% target share in week 5. Both of those look really good. But those stats, they're pulled out of context. And that's just the truth of it. When you consider how he got to that production utilization, suddenly things don't look as good. I mean, he was seeing a route participation nearly high enough to be in the conversation as a weekly option at tight end through weeks 1 and 4. It was just 68%. His target share, too, was way too low at 11%. Not good. But in week 5, he saw 71% route participation. But that was because Tank Dell was out of the lineup for most of the game. Dell had a 17% target share in the games where he was healthy, and he played all the way through. Dell should only be out at max a week with his concussion, I think. And at that point, he's going to jump back in the lineup, and he'll probably tank your Schultz stock. So I'm selling high on a player that had no value 2 weeks ago. Thanks to back-to-back performances with the score, he can be moved as a legit asset with value today. I don't think that his route participation or his target share is going to stay up once Tank Dell comes back. There's also tough matchups coming up these next few weeks. I'm moving off of Schultz before he just becomes another name on my bench, and he's not going to have any value.
Only rostered in 44% of leagues. So, in competitive leagues, 12-team, 14-team leagues, he's probably rostered. So in those situations, you could package him up and send him somewhere. Send him packing, okay? 10-team leagues might be on the waiver wire. Just letting you guys know. Okay, we talked about this before the season, that Tyler Lockett has 5 straight seasons with 8+ touchdowns. The only player that can say that. He's had 2 touchdowns this year, both coming against the Seahawks in week 2. Against the Seahawks. He didn't play the Seahawks. Against the Lions in week 2. Okay? We know the type of games Lockett can have, right? He's underperformed in the other 3 games that he's had. They're coming off the bye now. And yes, his matchups, coming up aren't really like amazing ones. But it's never really mattered a whole lot for Lockett, right? He was kind of like matchup independent, right? In games that weren't great matchups, like he'll come through, okay? So he's actually leading all wide receivers right now in end zone targets this year. And he had a bye week, all right? Not red zone targets, end zone targets. And he only has 1 end zone target that turned into a touchdown to show for it. So more touchdowns are coming for Lockett. Also, according to Fantasy Life data, he's leading the Seahawks in target share. He's leading them in air yards. He's leading them in with 64% of the end zone targets, yet he's currently the wide receiver 48 on the year. Okay, so this isn't going to stick. This is a good opportunity to buy low right now.
Yeah, I think this is a good call. And this is the thing. The fact that this is Tyler Lockett we're talking about is going to turn people off to it because he's not one of those guys where you draft him and feel like it's a home run or you have him in your lineup. Starting him, it doesn't feel like a fantastic thing to do, but he's just been solid every single year, like you mentioned, for the past 5 years. And it's only week 6. He's got plenty of time to make good on that 8+ touchdown streak. I think it's going to happen, like you mentioned. The utilization has looked like the utilization that's got him that streak of touchdowns, per season. So there's nothing wrong with Tyler Lockett here. Oddly enough, I'm still amazed. This is just something that I noticed, that DK Metcalf doesn't get more targets, just more usage overall because he's just such a specimen. But there's plenty of mouths to feed in this offense. Kenneth Walker having a few good games also doesn't really help when he's running the touchdowns in at the goal line. Sometimes that would be Tyler Lockett territory. The thing about Tyler Lockett is in the red zone, when they're throwing it to the end zone, he's one of the best off-script receivers in the league. He's just going to find a spot in the defense to get open. And Geno Smith has taken advantage of that before. It hasn't happened these past couple of weeks, but like you mentioned, he'll get back to doing his thing. And I think that buying low, you can buy him really low right now because he's had terrible output, these past couple of weeks. I got another buy. It's another wide receiver, but much younger than Tyler Lockett. It's Zay Flowers. Now, he has looked like Lamar Jackson's favorite target. Like, I know Mark Andrews is in this offense, but when you talk about wide receivers, like, we haven't seen this really from Lamar Jackson since Mark Andrews and him have been a tandem. You know what I mean? Zay Flowers is challenging for that title, if not already taken it. He has seen 24% target share in 4 out of 5 games. He has 30% target share over the entire season. That's top 12 in the NFL, just among any wide receivers. And he hasn't been below 15% target share in a game this season. 30% air yard share in the season. These numbers are all fantastic. He's getting plenty of targets. He's getting plenty of opportunity, both close and far down the field. He looked really good. And the beauty of it, too, is he's not coming off the field at all. He has 100% route participation each of the past 3 weeks. You know how we talked about what would this wide receiver room look like coming into the season between Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr., and Rashad Bateman. Like, you and I, we were on it. We said Zay Flowers is going to be the guy because Rashad Bateman wasn't going to be 100% right. And Odell Beckham, he's just not that guy right now. And that's just what we've seen play out. It's Odell and Rashad Bateman fighting to be that number 2. Neither of them have come close to establishing themselves like Zay Flowers has. I mean, it's to the point where Nelson Aguilar is coming in, but none of them are costing Zay Flowers time. So he's clearly the top guy in this offense. He's been relatively quiet. Despite that utilization that I just talked about, he has yet to have a top 12 fantasy week on the season. Better days are coming. Now, he's come close. He's had a wide receiver 15 week. He's getting the targets that he needs. He dropped a couple last week. It was tough, if you're a Zay Flowers manager, that had you upset. But the next 3 weeks, 3 straight matchups against opponents in the top 10 for fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. You got Tennessee, who are allowing the 7th most, Arizona the 8th, and Detroit the 10th. These next 3 weeks. Very good matchups. I think that Zay Flowers, he's going to have his first handful of top 12 finishes coming up, at least one of these games in the next 3 weeks.
I'm 100% on board with you. This is one of my favorite buys as well. I'm glad you brought it up as we were, planning for this show. I mean, I totally agree, man. All the peripherals are there. We know that he's a very talented receiver. So I'm with you, man. He was my number 2 wide receiver behind JSN coming into the NFL. He's commanding the targets. He had a drop pass last week that, could have had a bigger play. He had drop touchdowns, long touchdowns. Like, there are a lot of things that could have happened over the first 5 weeks that would make the view, I guess, on Zay Flowers completely different, right? And he could have came through on the perception. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Zach. The view on Zay Flowers, the perspective. I love it. That's why I keep you around. And also I keep you around for takes like this, where Zay Flowers is definitely a screaming buy. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Really appreciate you listening and spending time with us. If you haven't subscribed or followed this podcast on your podcast app, please do so now. It would mean the world to us. Hope this episode helped, and I'll be back tomorrow to go over our quarterback and running back rankings going into week 6. And Zach and I will be back together, just like today, on Friday for wide receivers and tight ends. See you guys then. Take it easy. Bye-bye.